Welcome to Ground Up Growth, where we share entrepreneurial insights, business strategies, and personal growth lessons to help listeners build success from the ground up.
Welcome to Ground Up Growth. Today we have Adam Black here. Adam Black is a mortgage lender with First Commercial Bank. Thank you, Adam, for coming on. Looking forward to this. He's got an incredible story. It's going to be a really good time. So thank you so much, Adam. So we're going to jump right in.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Listen to you first couple episodes. Not sure why you got me on here following those guys, but yeah, man, it's been great so far. So yeah, I'm excited to be here.
All right. So here we go. Give us the background on you. How old you are, where you from. Give us the rundown.
Yeah, so Adam Black, I'm 53 years old. Live here in Gluckstadt, Mississippi. Work for First Commercial Bank, soon to be Story Financial Partners. By the way, we're changing our name soon.
Really?
Yeah, we'll get into that.
Okay.
Live here in Gluckstadt with my wife, 2 kids. Anna Morgan's 23, fresh out of Ole Miss. Best times of our life. And Davis, my son's 19, and he's in his first year of college. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Married 28 years. Yeah.
Married 28 years.
Yeah.
So you have been in the mortgage industry for how long?
20 years.
20 years.
Halloween day of this past year.
Really?
Yeah, trick or treat. It's been tricks and treats.
All right. So where were you born?
I was born in Waynesboro, Wayne County, Mississippi.
Wayne County.
Grew up there. Was there until I was 18. Yeah, graduated high school,
Okay.
moved out immediately, and have pretty much been on my own since.
Really?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Did you go to college?
Did not go to college.
Really? Okay.
Lived in a household. Didn't encourage that. Didn't even know I needed to. It was
Really?
kind of a weird deal. It was kind of one of those things where grew up in a small town where a lot of people didn't pursue an education after high school. If so, it was Jones Jr. for a couple of years or something like that. Mm-hmm. And not everyone, don't get me wrong, but it just wasn't a big theme.
What a mentality.
And in my house, it wasn't at all. As a matter of fact, my daughter is the first person to ever graduate college, to ever go to college from my entire father's or mother's side.
Wow.
Yeah. How about that?
We've got to dive into this.
Isn't that crazy?
To be as successful as you are, that is the epitome of what ground up growth. We're fixing to have to dissect that.
When I heard the title of this, I was like, that is
your
me.
song.
Yeah, that's me. That's my story. It just is.
And nobody would know. I've known you
Yeah.
for a long time.
Yeah.
And I don't know all the intricacies of your upbringing and how
Yeah.
you got.
Yeah, so man, I had a tough upbringing. Had parents who I was an unexpected pregnancy. I don't mind telling that. I always say I'm a backseat baby. Parents married. Dad left when I was 6 months old. She remarried, divorced. They remarried again when I was 6. Stayed married for a few years.
Your original dad?
Yeah. My dad came back into my life.
Okay.
Yeah. So
were your parents from Wayne County?
they were both from Wayne County. Both of them had grown up together in the same communities. Only years of difference in age. Yeah, a year or two difference in age. So
your dad came back into the picture when?
He came back into the picture when I was 6.
Okay.
Yeah. So you always hear Papa was a Rolling Stone. My mama was a Rolling Stone. Yeah. So and again, it's just my story. It just is.
No, that's incredible.
But yeah, he left when I was around 6 or 8 months old. She married a guy. They didn't stay married long. We came back to Waynesboro. She remarried my dad. That didn't last 5 or 6 years, maybe a little bit longer than that. And so that was kind of that's where a lot of my not thinking I needed to go to college, no financial literacy like we've talked about before,
Right.
Just got nothing from that. And look, they did the best they could. I'm not knocking my parents,
For sure.
Yeah, they did the best they could. And
but having hurdles like that out the gate, man,
it was tough. You know, it was tough. And we'll get into this. It plays into my story later on. But I think it also gave me a springboard because it made me such a sponge when I did get around good people and positive people and entrepreneurial people and people that would pour into me.
Yeah.
It just made me like, whoa, I want this, you know? So, yeah.
Okay. So you graduated high school?
Graduated high school,
18.
barely.
So what, did you work through high school?
Yeah. I always had a job. You know, I always did something, had to. I mean, you know, I wasn't a kid that parents bought them cars. You know, my first car was a $75 MG Midget. You know, so with no seats, I drove around with milk cartons in it. Yeah, so,
What?
Yeah, so I didn't keep that one long. Kept flipping them up, but yeah. So I mean, you know, I had to work to have anything, and so I worked through school, did a lot of different things. And that was kind of following. My dad was all kinds of different things. He had a sheetrock company. He was a mechanic. He did, man, I can't even remember what all. But, you know, so that was just kind of my thing too, was just through school. I'd do something different every summer, kind of learned a lot of things.
What was your dad's work ethic like?
It's strange, man. I've been asked that before. My dad works dang hard when he works.
Right.
He had spurts of greatness. You know, yeah, you know, I mean, like,
Was he involved in you? In, like, I mean, you know, you always hear dad worked all the time or whatever.
No.
Did he spend time with you?
No time. Actually, my dad was real abusive when I was young. My mom was my parent. Yeah, the best she could be. I played all sports. She never missed a game. It didn't matter. You know, it was she was going to be there. He was just absent. You know, he just was. And I love him. You know, we have a relationship to this day, and I care about him and all. But it was just he just did what he could do.
Right.
You know, and that was just took me a long time to come to terms with that, to understand that. And to be okay with it, but it just is what it is.
Yeah, that's
you know,
right.
it made me who I am. There's zero doubt that is
That carved you, for sure.
that is all played out through my life of being tough and grinding it out and stuff like that. You know, because I had to. You know.
So what was your move out of high school?
Yeah, so right out of high school, I mean, and when I say right out of high school, like I graduated on a Friday, and that Monday I was working. I moved up to Tuscaloosa. Worked in the oil and gas industry for just a little while, about a year. That's when they were methane boom was going on in Tuscaloosa. They were going into these old oil wells, and they were basically fracking them, what we know is fracking nowadays, and they were getting methane out of them. And I went to work for a guy delivering supplies up there, and it was just just driving a truck every day, taking stuff out to these land rigs. And
Where'd you live?
I lived in a little apartment, which still to this day I wonder. You know, they just let an 18-year-old rent an apartment.
Right, yeah.
You know, I mean, and it's kind of ironic. I had never, I always laugh about this. I grew up in a house. I'd never had central heating air. I'd never had air conditioning. And all of a sudden move into an apartment, I'm like, what is this?
You're in the Ritz.
You know, why am I freezing? My God, it's cold in here. So it took me it was country come to town, you know.
Right.
And then on top of that, you're living in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
You know, in college town, and you're not going to college, but everything's there that you need.
Wow.
You know?
Wow. Okay.
And you're in an industry with a bunch of roughnecks too.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
so
for sure.
it's it was a
So you did
fun
that
year.
for a year.
Did that for about a year.
Where'd you pivot from there?
So from there, I came home.
To Wayne County.
Well, actually, to Meridian. Mom was on number 4 or 5 by then.
Really?
Yeah,
That's where I was born, Meridian.
So she was living in Meridian. They married a guy there. Moved in with them, and that was in '91, early in '91, and I was working at a Western store for a guy. Just kind of a guy needed help, had a feed store and a Western store, and that's right when all that was growing. You probably don't remember this, but that was like when 8 Seconds came out, and just everybody wanted to be a cowboy.
You ain't gonna believe this. I just saw 8 Seconds for the first time about a month ago.
That's probably a good thing because I watch it now and I think, God, that was some horrible acting. But yeah, he had a couple of Western stores, Meridian, Newton, Jackson, and feed stores, and just kind of all around farm supply.
Yeah.
And I went to work for him and loved it. And that was actually, he was the first guy, Sam Bounds. I love him to death. He was the first guy that like enabled me. And when I say that in a positive way, like showed me I could do things,
Right.
Showed me I could be responsible, and stuff like that. And
so at this time, was it starting to click on like your interest in anything, your sponge activity?
No, not really. Just really at that time, man, I was kind of like, and this has all come through years of therapy. Looking back on it, I was kind of starting to gravitate to people that were positive and that would show me some attention. I was finally looking for positive attention, rather than negative attention.
Right.
And he was such an amazing guy, man. Still is to this day, and I talked to him a good bit. But yeah, man, I always say I'm his fourth son. He just really. I remember I'd been there about 3 or 4 months, and he was like, "You think you can run this place?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can run it." He said, "Okay, then I just need you to fire the girl that's your boss." I was like, "Oh, wow."
And you're what, 20?
I'm 19. Yeah. And, looking back on it, I didn't do it the right way, but I did it, and started doing that for him. And then I got into, I think you know this, I got into rodeo real big.
I've heard this.
Yeah. I started fighting bulls. I was a rodeo bullfighter.
Really?
Yeah. And that took off. That was like the rocket ship for me. That was the first time in my life where I went, man, I'm good at something, and I can be good at something.
You had an identity.
I had an identity. That was my identity. And so for 4 years, that's pretty much what I did for a living. Sam gave me the luxury of being able to just travel when I needed to. When I was home, I'd work for him. He was just so awesome about that. And
so did you have any money to rodeo? Because that ain't free.
No, well, so with me fighting bulls, I was on a contract. In other words, they were paying me to come to a rodeo and protect cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. I mean, that was how I was making my living at that point. As meager of a living as it was, which at 19 you don't need a lot,
right?
Like the second year, I was on the road like 48 weeks.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
So I mean, I was just living in a little S10 truck and just rocking it. You couldn't have told me anything. Oh, wow. So I did that, and
did you ever have any injuries with that?
Yeah, I had a lot of injuries. Yeah, I've had pretty much everything broke you can have broke. In fact, Tyler was talking the other day about the hamstring thing. I've had that, and
I remember that.
Yeah, I've had legs, arms, hands, feet, jaw, you name it. I've had it broke, back, neck.
Is there any bull that sticks out in your mind as the worst bull you ever dealt with?
Probably the very first one. Yeah, in all honesty, that was probably one of the worst hookings I ever took.
Vivid. Remember it?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I told some guys on a podcast the other day, I can still smell.
Oh gosh,
the smells and all. It's so vivid.
Wow.
It's so vivid. You just never forget it. But also, it was like an adrenaline rush. It was
right. Yeah.
Oh wow. I survived that. That's pretty cool,
Man.
And I always tell this story that guy that got me started, named Mr. Red Kent, he was from Meridian. I told him I wanted to fight bulls. And he's like, well, okay, we're going to go to Mr. Wendell George's up in Kemper County this weekend. You can come with us. And we got up there, and I had a pair of shorts and cleats on, And he's like, all right, your job is just whenever that cowboy comes off that bull, you get in between them. It don't matter what you got to do. He can't get hooked. That's your job. You understand? I said, yes, sir. And he goes, I'll give you one piece of advice. I said, all right. He said, you better run in circles. Don't you try to outrun them. I was like, what do you mean? He said, man, you can't outrun them. Don't run no straight line. And I was like, okay. Well, when you're in a situation like that, you've never been in, you don't think anymore.
Right.
So about the third or fourth bull comes out, and I'll never forget a big brindle bull they call Mudcat, flat horns, big, wide, probably about 1,900, 2,000 pounds. Throws a guy named Alan Covington off, rolls him up on his back, lands on his back of his neck, kind of balled up, and he comes around. And when he comes around, I just instinctively just ran in between them, and he followed me. And I was like, oh God, I did my job. This guy didn't get hooked. well, he's still there. He's still coming. And I'm like, oh God, what do I do? And I can hear him, going, run in circles, run in circles. And I'm like, heck no, I'm running straight to that fence. And man, he just flattens me out and just camps out on me. Just, and I get up, and I'm like, blood, mud, bull crap, everything all over me, and I'm wide eyed and Red, he comes running out there and, he's like looking at me and I'm like, I'm okay.
Right.
He's like, you're good. And I look over myself, and I'll never, ever forget this, just the way it happened. He put both hands on my shoulder. He's a little short guy, and he looked up at me, and he said, hey, man, look, you can go get in that little S10 over there and leave, and we won't think no less of you, because you've done something tonight that most men will never do in their lives.
Wow.
He said, or you can stay in here and do it again, and you'll never regret doing it.
Wow.
And, man, there have been times in my life when it was the rock bottom, and I was like, I got to keep going.
Oh,
I just got to keep going. I can quit.
That's so
I can
good.
quit. People, they'll forget me.
Right.
But man, if I just keep going, I'll be okay.
Man.
And man, a year later, I was pro, and I had a great 3 or 4 year run. And probably could have been had I been a little bit more mature and had some background in that sport, could have probably stayed in it for a really long time.
Yeah.
I finally quit when when Candy was pregnant with Anna Morgan. So I was 30, and at that point I already had a career and I was just doing it on the weekends. But yeah, I did it for 4 years. That's what my tax return said was, pro athlete. That's as good as that sounds.
Very nice.
Yeah.
All right. So gotta figure this transition out from bullfighter to mortgage lender.
Yeah. So,
You used to work when I first got in the business. You were at Prime Lending, is that right? And
That's
wasn't their logo a bull?
It was a bull. It was a buffalo. That's right. Ironically, yeah. So, all right. So, a couple of stops in between. Some jobs. Sam decided to shut down the Western stores. One of my clients ran Cock of the Walk, Mr. Ken Jackson.
Yeah.
You remember Ken? Had the place out at Pocahontas. Ken came to me, found out we were going out of business. He said, hey, man, I can find a place for you to work. You'll work. That's hard to find nowadays. I'll find a place for you. Well, within a month, I was managing Cock of the Walk.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, you're what, 22?
22 at that time. Yeah, 22. Well, maybe even 21,
How many locations
actually.
did they have at that time?
At that
Just the
time, we
one,
had
or?
Austin, Texas, Nashville,
What?
Madison, and then we had the Western Sizzlings and I-55 North and Meridian.
I had no idea.
Yeah, he was huge, man. People don't really understand. Ken was one of the
no
biggest
idea.
restaurateurs in the country at one time. He was huge. Yeah.
Wow.
And
I
one
had
of
no
the
idea about
best
that.
ever. So I got in with Slick and was living on his farm, running his restaurants. Another just God moment, just putting me with somebody like that was so entrepreneurial, because see, he had came from, a lot of people don't know Ken's story, and it's terrible that all these podcasts are out now that could just soak up his knowledge. He had come from, Carthage, Mississippi. His dad was a barber and just worked his way up. He was a salesman at Sears. That's how he paid for his first restaurant, was off commissions, selling refrigerators. And he was a wonderful story. I can't believe nobody's ever wrote a book about him. But he was another guy that just poured into me. Now, he was rough. Boy, it was Ken's way or the highway. Golly, he was tough. He showed me a lot of things not to do to people. I'll say that. But, man, he latched on to me.
Yeah.
And he grew me. He took me at that time of my life and showed me some different things. And he knew I had some patience and had some grind.
Yeah.
And put me in charge of things that he probably shouldn't have put a 21-year-old in charge of. And I did it,
Yeah.
So that was kind of, rodeo started coming to an end there for me as far as full time. And I met my wife, Candy. That's where it all went wrong. No. We've had to edit that out. Oh, yeah. No. I met her when I was working at the restaurants, and man, that was that moment. I always tell people that I was like, and I'll always say this to my kids when they get ready to get married, is I finally met somebody that made me want to play up. I was like, she had a career, she'd went to college, and she just, I was like, man, this is different. What is this? This is somebody with stability, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And I knew, I was like, man, she ain't gonna
Yeah.
put
You'd
up
never
with
been
me.
exposed to
I'd
that.
never
I
been
mean, your
exposed
parents
to it.
didn't go to college, and
No,
or
I'd never been
nobody
exposed to it.
in your lineage had
Yeah.
gone to college. So
And you know, just her going, you know, just her having a plan and knowing where she wanted to be and knowing what she wanted in a man.
Right.
You know, and it wasn't me at that time. You know, I mean, I'll be honest. You know, I always tell people I would not be where I'm at without my wife.
Right.
There's zero chance.
No doubt.
But I did. I was like, man, if I'm going to stay with this girl, I can't be running up and down the roads and,
Right,
and doing
yeah.
all this.
Right,
It's time
right,
to settle down.
right.
So I got the settling bug in me, and we got married. And Cock of the Walk thing came to an end just through some different circumstances. And I got into car sales, and did that for a couple of years.
And you're in Jackson?
I'm in Jackson then.
So you're dating Candy,
Candy.
and you're living where?
We were living. I had a place over on Sun Drive in Jackson.
Okay.
Over off of Old Canton.
Okay.
Me and a bunch of guys, just
Yeah.
you know, kind of place ramen noodles and you know, just a typical pad.
Right, yeah.
You know, just
Still
you know,
bachelor
Mexican
life.
blankets over the windows. You know, but you know, I started selling cars, and I fell in love with sales. I mean, like my first year in the car business, I sold 300 cars.
Really?
Yeah. And I mean, everybody was like, what are you doing? And I was like, man, y'all are paying me for every car I sell? I want to sell as many as I can, you know?
Right.
And they were like, well, how are you doing? I was like, man, I'm just talking to people, you know?
Yeah.
And so that was when the sales bug bit me, but I would get out of that eventually. We moved to Greenwood after we were married the next year. We were married in 96. Yeah, 96. We moved to Greenwood, and I tried the car business there, and it was just dead. It just wasn't no business there.
Yeah.
So I was tending bar at the Greenwood Country Club, and I know this is long-winded, but it all weaves into my story of how just God moments for me. And some guys were in there one night, and they were coming in every night, and they were like, man, what do you do for a living during the day? And I said, well, I sell cars when I can sell one. And they were like, well, man, that's funny. We make car parts. And they were at Irvin Automotive there in Greenwood, which was at the time a really big manufacturer for trim items, headrest, armrest, sun visors, things like that, for all the big ones, Ford, GM, Toyota. And one of the guys said, man, why don't you come in tomorrow for an interview? I said, doing what? He said, we'll find something. He said, if you're working a night job and a day job, we'll find something for you to do. And I was like, okay, you know, so I went in the next day. They hired me on the spot as a supervisor. And my first job with them was I had 65 people building the Ford Ranger armrest.
Really?
And
that was my first truck.
was it?
Danger Ranger.
Well, you probably had
2.0 4-cylinder manual shift.
Bad machine.
Oh, yeah.
Bad machine. I had one of those too, actually.
What's Candy doing at this point? Y'all are married. What's she doing?
Yes. Yeah. Candy is in medical records. She's building out a career managing medical records departments, and that's what took us to Greenwood. She took over their medical records department, and that was her degree and stuff was in health information management. Now most of that stuff's done from home, amazingly. But yeah, so that's what she was doing. She had her own career. I was trying to find mine, and I got into that business and really thrived, man. I moved my way up from a supervisor on one line to I ended up having 4 lines under me, and then I actually went into engineering. I somehow talked the head engineer into hiring me. And it was one of those deals where I asked him, I knew he didn't have a college degree in engineering and had worked his way up. And I said, hey, man, I'm just like you. I just need a chance, you know. And he said, well, he sat down with my boss. They were best friends. And he said, well, man, you understand if you move from one department to the next and you don't make it, you don't go back. I was like,
Wow.
okay.
Yeah.
And I did it. And I love that. That was pretty cool. I liked fooling with numbers and stuff like that. That's when I really started seeing the numbers and stuff that will later track into my business. And stayed in that a few years, and they moved to Mexico.
Okay.
NAFTA got them. And right about that time, Nissan was kicking off. And some guys that I had been a liaison for called Johnson Controls out of Hudson, Wisconsin, contacted me and said, hey, man, we heard they're moving to Mexico. What are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm not going to Del Rio, Texas and driving across the border every day.
Right.
And they said, well, we're opening a plant in Madison, Mississippi. How close is that to you? And I said, man, it's where I used to live, actually. I said, it's 100 miles max. And they owned the phone, made me an offer. And I came down here in February of 2002. Candy stayed up there. We just had Anna Morgan. She was a couple years old. And I worked until middle of that year when her and Anna Morgan could come down. Mm-hmm. And we launched the plant that built the seats for Nissan. And I was plant superintendent. Actually, at that point, I was a shift supervisor. And stayed with them a couple of years and made my way up to plant superintendent, or actually shift superintendent was what it was. They had a little step in between. And they put us on night shift, put me and a group of guys on night shift to clean it up. And we cleaned it up, come back to days, it'd go bad again, they'd send us back.
How did night shift affect your personal life? Because I experienced that. My dad used to work at the post office, and he would work. I mean, I remember him working night shift a pretty good bit.
There's nothing worse than having to go to bed when everybody else is going out to work and doing stuff. It is, to me, and I know there's some people that love it and can do it and get their bodies acclimated to it. I always tell the story. I've been doing it about 4 or 5 months, and I literally fell asleep walking one night.
Really?
I mean, I caught myself like mid-fall. I was like, oh, I just fell asleep. Kind of like when you're driving and doze off.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't get used to it. And my body started getting, just started getting out of whack.
Did it put a strain on the marriage?
Well, not really, and it had to be hard on Candy because she was trying to keep a 2-year-old quiet during the day.
Right, yeah.
And which by that time, actually, she was working from home then. And,
I remember tiptoeing around the house as a kid.
Yeah, she's trying to keep her quiet, and she knows her daddy's back in the spare bedroom. She wants to be back there playing, and it was, I mean, there were times when I'd go a week and have 10 hours sleep, and you're just wired, you're living off of Red Bulls and honey buns, it ain't a good life at all. So, the only way to move up in that, I kept telling them, man, I got to get off this night shift. If y'all don't get me off night shift, I got to do something. Well, the only option was at that point was to move up into another position, and that meant moving. And I just knew that was not going to happen. And that's where the mortgage business came in. We were living over in Harvey Crossing in Gluckstadt. And there's a big group of guys in there that were all in the mortgage business. And they were younger than me and just blowing and going. This is 2004. So this is right
How
in the height.
in 2004?
I'm 20, I'll say I'm 32.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and they're all in their 20s. And, and they're making 6 figures, and I don't know what all they're doing. I just know they're making a lot of money. And one of them's like, man, you're good with people. You know everybody. Why don't you get in our business? I was like, man, I don't know anything about that. I barely graduated high school because I couldn't get past math class. I don't know what interest rate is, blah, blah. And they just kept on. They're like, it's not.
Was that overwhelming? Like not coming up with financial discipline and things? Was that intimidating to you at the time?
Very
like
much
trying
so.
to crack that code?
Which we will get into. My financial literacy bit me in the butt. Yes, big time. Or illiteracy, I should say. So they just kept on. They were like, man, it's not about the numbers. It's not about the mortgages. It's about relationships, and you're just good at that. So, October 31st of 2004, I quit. I walked out of the plant for the last time that morning, had a big Halloween party that night, and Monday I was in the mortgage business. And when I
what I am gathering through this story is that you are not scared to take a risk.
I am not.
And that is part of.
In some ways, that's what's weird about me is like, I'll never venture outside and like buy houses and stuff like that. Yeah. That's too. I'm. If I can see it, I can do it.
Yeah.
But I gotta keep my blinders on. Right. I can't get distracted.
Yeah. But you've got the drive. You got everything. You got all the characteristics.
I got the tools. Yeah. And most of all, I'm always learning. I mean. I always want to learn from people. Right. And I think that's what's really made me able to transfer and move into different things is that I'm okay with going into something not knowing.
And not knowing and being vulnerable and saying, look.
Hey, man, I don't know a thing about this.
Man, that's one thing that I harp on all the time is like, it's amazing because, every guy loves to know all aspects of different things. But if you just show up and you're like, you know what? I don't know anything about, if it's a mechanical thing or an electrical thing or whatever, and if you show your vulnerability of like, I don't know, but teach me, people respect that and they will bend over backwards to help you. And
100%.
if you just put a wall up and act like you know it all, you're never going to learn. And that is, that's good to hear you had that mentality.
That's
because
a great way to look at it. Yeah.
That's good. So who did you start with? What was the company?
So this is where it gets even funnier. I went to work for a guy. I won't call his name just because I don't want to embarrass him, but he owned a brokerage here in town. And I went to work with him October 31st, and around January the 3rd or 4th, I was headed to work, and somebody called me and said, "You seen the newspaper?" And I don't know, some of y'all are young enough, you don't know, the newspaper used to be a thing you got every day.
Right, yeah.
So I said, "No." And he said, "Where are you at?" And I said, "I'm pulling in to get a sausage biscuit at Deerfield." He said, "You need to get a newspaper." I was like, "Okay." Go in there, and first thing I do is get my sausage biscuit. I'm walking out, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm supposed to get a newspaper."
Right.
Front page is this guy being indicted on 47 counts of mortgage fraud.
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, what?
This is the guy that got you in?
Yes. Well, this is actually not the guy that got me in. This is the guy that we were working for.
Okay.
But the guy that got me in also got looped into it. So got to work that day. It's tense. And he calls everybody in the room and he's ranting and raving. This is all fake. This is all false. And I'm going to fight it and I'm going to show them. And, and if, and he made some comment and if you got any doubts in me, you just need to hit the door now. I said, all right. I was like, man, the FBI, and they don't come after you unless they got something.
Right,
and they may not have 47 somethings, but they got something.
Right. All I need is one out of 47 to hit, and I'm out.
So long story short, me and a guy named Chris McQueen, we had already been talking about this, actually. We were getting this weird vibe. We were like, why do we not fit in here?
Right.
Going to find out we were the honest ones. Yeah. So he called me that afternoon. He said, "You ready to do this?" I was like, "Yeah." And we opened up a business on the fly. I mean,
really?
And I'm still amazed to this day, and I would fight it tooth and nail if they would still allow it, that the state of Mississippi and the Banking Commission would just let two guys with less than 6 months experience start a mortgage company.
Right.
It's just crazy.
Well, that's parallel with like my story. I mean, I had no intentions of getting into real estate and got a degree from Mississippi State in management of construction and land development. Graduated 08, 09, did not have a job because obviously during that time period, the economy was toast. Mm-hmm. Could not find a job. And so, but I had sat for enough coursework, had enough coursework hours or classroom hours to sit for my real estate broker's exam. And to your point, that's what I did. I had zero experience, zero knowledge, and got a broker's license and could legally, legitimate, start a brokerage, sell you, property manage, do whatever with no idea what I was doing. That is, you can't do it now, but back, I got in 2011 and that was on the table, and that's wild.
But don't you look back at that and go, what were they thinking?
Man, I could have train wrecked. Bad. Very bad.
No doubt. So we started that company, and we took
what was it called?
That was called Equiprime Lending. We were over around the North Park area, and we were just a brokerage. We were set up with all the big ones, Bank of America and Countrywide and all of them, and we would just take a deal and find out where it fit best and send it to them.
This is what, 04,
This
05?
is 05.
05.
This is 05.
So we're creeping up on the 08, 09.
Yeah, which plays a big part of my story, big chapter. Still a lot of the subprime stuff going on. Mm-hmm. It was the wild, wild west. We weren't doing a lot of it. It just didn't fit my gut.
Explain the subprime to our listeners. A lot of people are not.
So the subprime era was where lending got really, really loose. And to the point of I can remember if you had a 580 credit score, which to the general public doesn't mean much, but that's real bad. That you ain't paid nobody. Right. You can have a pulse and have a 600 credit score.
Right.
And they would give you 100% financing, meaning you didn't have to put anything down.
No money down.
No money down. And it was just like,
handing them out.
and the rates were good. The rates weren't much worse than a conventional rate. And man, they were just putting these people in these positions, and most of them were like a 3-year arm or a 4-year arm or something like that, which means that whatever rate you had at the end of 3 years, it's going to change. And it's going to change a lot. Well,
ARM is adjustable rate mortgage.
Adjustable rate mortgage. We had these people that they had no skin in the game. They had nothing invested in the house.
Yeah.
They could have moved in an apartment and cost them more.
Right.
And all of a sudden their rate goes up. Well, what do?
Bail.
Just bail. Just bail.
They got no skin to lose.
Yeah, nothing to lose. And that's what caused 08, 09 was subprime.
Right.
And man, we would see it when Chris and I were pretty logical, and looking inside, we were going, dude, this ain't gonna last.
This ain't right.
What these guys are doing is not gonna last. Which we'd already seen people go to prison for stuff. Falsifying documents and stuff like that. We'd already got that close to the fire. And so we just tried to do a little bit more legitimate business, and we did a good job of that.
But you're making good money at this time. I'm
making what I think's good money. There's this little thing they forget to tell you is that when you're self-employed, you still got to pay taxes. Darn it! I love being W-2 now.
I have seen that play out. People forget to put hay in the barn.
You got to
put
put
1099, and you have a good year. You can't flex too hard. You got to put some hay in the barn.
So we started flexing. And we didn't do it bad, but I always tell this story, and my wife's gonna kill me for telling this story. But I did it; she didn't. I'll leave her out. We were going out with friends one day on a boat, and they canceled on us. It's like a Thursday, so we're just all bummed out, and both of us taking off work, and we're riding down Old Fannin Road, and there's what's RJ Marine now. I don't know what it was then. And I'm like, let's just look at a pontoon boat. She's like, okay. So we're looking at him. Guy comes out there and he's like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, man, I'm doing 100% financing all these things right now. I was like, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. What'd you say?
So we left with a pontoon boat behind my Toyota pickup.
You had no intentions of buying a boat the day before.
No intentions. And this is, I'm gonna get back to this of why it's important to hear and to tell. So I pull the boat home with my Toyota truck, and I realize it's a 22-foot boat, and you can't even see the truck in front of it. The front tires aren't even touching the ground hardly. So I'm like, well, what are we going to do? So I go buy a new truck.
No, he doubled down.
In a weekend, I doubled
100%
down.
financing on the truck?
No, I put some money down. I had some money in my other truck was paid for. So, but I did finance
All right,
it.
so now you pulling up to the office in a new truck and a boat. And this is what?
This is a
flirting with 08, 09.
This is probably 06, I would think. Okay. I would think. Just making stupid financial decisions simply because I had no financial background. I had no one ever say that's a bad idea. What I had seen modeled at home was just get by the best you can. If you need to write a bad check, you'll make it up later. And even though I knew that wasn't right, I still just didn't have the capacity to understand.
Yeah.
You got to pay all this back.
Right.
All this, there's taxes due. There's,
So it was probably more so the mindset, like we deal with this with people a lot of times, is what's my payment?
What is my payment?
I ain't worried about the interest rate, not worried about the length of the loan, not worried about what's going to happen when the loan comes due and the rate goes up or whatever. So that was your mindset?
That was my mindset, was can we budget for it? Does it fit into our budget?
Yes.
And it did until 08.
Oh.
So,
yes, tell me about 08, because I got in 2011.
Yeah, so we were rolling, man. We were doing really well, and having some successes, and doing pretty well, well enough to not realize you need to be putting something back. Mm-hmm. Not having like a slow month and going, oh man, I need to prepare for that next time. Just kind of level keel, growing every month, and going, this is always going to be here.
Comfortable.
And in 08, it went away. The subprime crashed.
That was
instant. I always tell the story. In September of 08, I went in to the office. I was going to have my best month ever. I was closing like 10 deals that day. I was going to have a huge month. Even by today's standards, that's still a big month.
Right.
And I sat down at my computer, opened it up, and the first email I got was, we failed to inform you that ABC Lending is no longer funding loans. Any loans you have in our pipeline will not be funded today. Well, there went 2 off the board. I sat there from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock that day in a 2-hour span and watched us go from 10 loans to 1 mortgage we closed that day.
Oh, my goodness.
There was a guy that started a
And you're
website.
100%, I mean, for our listeners,
100%
you're
commission.
100% commission.
100% commission.
No stipend,
That's
no
right.
salary
Nothing.
plus.
Nothing.
Eat what you kill.
Yeah, eat what you kill, and I'm paying the rent on the building. I own the business, So on top of that, on top of just my personal income, I've got all these other expenses. And there was a guy had a website built. It was called the Mortgage Implodometer, and he was tracking. He had forecasted this. He kept saying this was going to crash. This was going to crash, and nobody listened to him. He built this website, and his whole job every day was to show companies that were going out of business. And at one point, there were so many so many banks and lenders went out of business in a 24-hour period that it crashed the website.
No.
He couldn't keep up with it. And man, it was just like all of a sudden, I mean, I tell people we took a 80% pay cut overnight. I mean, and I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And a wife that had come home from work, actually. We were doing well enough that she had come home from work to take care of the kids. And man, it was just devastating.
Gosh.
And
so you're in a valley.
we're just in and it's funny, Paul, you say that. We really didn't even realize at that point how big of a valley we were in.
Yeah.
You're just like, it's like a fog. It's like
Yeah,
you
you're
can't
rolling
even
with it. But
you're just like,
don't-
well, surely it's going to change in a week or so, right?
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
You're remaining optimistic.
Yeah. We didn't know it was going to last 2 years. Really, looking back on it, it was really 4 years. So, man, this again is part of my story. We lost everything. We lost our house, our vehicles, foreclosure, bankruptcy, the whole nine. And for a long time I was embarrassed about it and stuff like that. And I was like, man, this is my story, and if I don't tell it, I'm not being honest.
Right.
And people need to hear this.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate the vulnerability and you talking about that, because that's extremely tough. And everybody can act like they have everything together, all the time. But at the end of the day, I mean, again, this is ground up growth. You're going to go through those valleys if you're a normal person, you're going through those things. And, that I really appreciate that, because I know that can be tough. But in the same breath, you can help the next person avoid that pothole. And back to your point, this sounds like this all stemmed from not having financial guidance from your parents
100.
or anybody in your sphere of influence at the time.
Nobody.
And had you had that, it would have probably triggered some red flags along the way, be it probably not buying the truck or the boat or whatever, or putting hay in the barn when you had a 1099 job. And man, I hate that you went through that. I appreciate that you're willing to talk about it, but it can be a blessing to the next person to help somebody avoid that. And that's huge.
Well, it was funny. A few years after the bruising went away, so, a guy asked me to speak about it at a men's luncheon. I said, "Yeah, man, I'll do that." And I was so nervous, and I'm not a great speaker anyway. And I spoke and just kind of poured it out, man. Right. You got choked up a few times and things like that. And for the next 6 or 8 months, my phone rang once a week with some guy going, "Hey, man, I know it's going to sound weird, but I saw you speak, and could you talk to me?" Kind of going through the same thing.
Really?
Yeah, man. I mean, it was.
Wow, that's powerful.
It was powerful, man, and it plugged me into some guys that I've stayed in touch with since. And I think just being, like you said, being vulnerable and not being able to, not being scared to just say, "Man, I failed.
Yeah,
I fell on my face, but I got up."
Right.
No,
that is it is part of more people's story. I mean, that's. We've talked about, people have asked me when I'm going to tell my story, and I don't know when I'll tell my story, but I have failures in my story too, and that's just part of it.
Well, I hope this make you feel okay with telling them because I mean people
Right.
people need to hear it. They need to know that it's all right.
It's
You're gonna
okay.
fall.
100%.
If you're not trying.
Yeah.
You know. So from there, man, stayed in the business kind of indirectly. Helped a guy wind down some rental properties. Actually helped a bankruptcy court wind down a Ponzi scheme type thing that they had found, and it was a guy owned a bunch of houses, and I helped them work through that. And knew I eventually wanted to be back in lending, and man, I would never forget. Like, and I owe so much to my wife for this, but I remember like these companies would call me from the automotive manufacturing industry because I had a pretty good reputation in that business, and they say, "Hey, man, I heard you fell on hard times, man. We got a job for you." I was like, "Man, I'm not going back to that." And I remember sitting with Candy and just going, "Hey, if we can just hold on, I can do this. I can be more than just good at this."
Right.
And man, she kept believing in me, or either
Kept
she
the
acted
faith.
like she did.
That's huge, man. That is,
dude. If you don't have somebody in your corner, golly, to come along beside you, it's tough. I feel sorry for people that don't.
yeah. Man, that's really good
Yeah.
and powerful to hear to have. Man, having your spouse, I mean, we've hit on this on every single episode.
It's
that
important.
The spouse is so integral.
That girl's kept
to
me
growth.
straight.
All right, so
Prime Lending comes to town. They were a big national lender at the time, man. They were like probably number 2, number 3 lender in the nation. And they opened up a branch here, and a guy I knew was going to manage it for them, and went to work for them. And boy, that is where that's where it became a career. That's where it went from being a job until I find the next job to being, man, I'm good at this.
Right.
I can be good at this.
Right.
They were great. Prime Lending was great about paying for coaching and stuff like that, which is something that anybody in a business, if you're starting a business, I don't care who you are, I don't care how smart you are, you need a coach. You need a coach or a mentor or something.
Right.
So that was where it turned around, man. I was went with them, and actually my very first year with them, I made their President's Club, which is top 5% originators with their company, which they were huge at the time. They probably had 2,500 originators.
Very nice.
And stayed there for a few years, and this is kind of, again, God thing. I was at an event for them in Lake Tahoe.
That's a beautiful place.
Oh my gosh, man. And part of the thing was we had to write our obituary. Yeah. Which if you've never done it, it's sobering.
Golly.
If you sit down and write your own obituary the way you want it to be read, it will make you tighten up. And if it doesn't, you got something wrong with you. You need to double check yourself. So I did that, and I was having some trouble, not with Prime Lending, but with the manager. And he and I are great friends now, and I've been able to tell him this, and he's grown from it.
Right.
But we did our obituary thing, and then we were in another deal, and the guy, I'll never forget it. He said, "People don't leave companies; they leave managers. They don't go to companies; they go to leaders." And I was like, "He's a manager. He's great at managing a P&L, but he's not a leader. And I don't need anybody to manage me. I need somebody to lead me."
Mm-hmm.
And I had just met with Freddie Rowell at Metropolitan Bank the week before, just strictly out of a favor to somebody.
Yeah.
And we had hit it off. He's old country boy. I'm old country
Freddie.
boy. Yeah, And we had hit it off. And I called that son from the hotel room. I said, "Hey, man, send me an offer." And he said, "You serious?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I thought you were out on a trip with Prime Lending." I said, "I am, but when I come home, I'm with Metropolitan." And he sent me an offer, and I called my wife on the way home. I said, "You ain't gonna believe this," but and I went to work with Metropolitan in 2013, and man, I've been with that group ever since through 3 different bank iterations. We've been Metropolitan Bank, then we were Renaissance. And then we all left Renaissance and went to First Commercial almost 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago. And we're soon to be Story Financial Partners.
Story Financial. Man.
Yeah.
That's an incredible story. And we've got a few minutes left. So I want to get your take on the current state of the market, what you're seeing now. I mean, having been in the business and gone through, I mean, real estate is a cyclical industry, and going through 08, 09, and then COVID. What is your take? What's the forecast looking like?
I think we're trying to find our footing. I think we did come out of some crazy times with COVID, and now we've got a new administration that's disrupting a lot of things. And I think it's going to take 60 to 90 days of them issuing that disruption and wading through things before they can turn around and focus on the economy. But I think once they focus on the economy and let that be their focus, it's going to turn around pretty quickly. I don't think we're going to see 3% rates again, and I don't want to. That's not good. That people don't understand when you're in my industry. That's not a good thing. You're giving away free money, and it means something's wrong with the economy.
Right. Yeah.
It's false
for a reason.
It's a false sense of hope. And but I do think we'll get back to a level, to a level area of good rates that allow you to buy the house you need.
Right.
May not be the house you want, but it'll be the house you need.
Right. Yeah. No, and I agree with you 100% on that. And that's one thing that, we all experience this, but, coming out of those 3% rates and, they say we took the elevator up to 7 or 8%, and we're taking the escalator down.
That's right.
So we're slowly coming down, but and that's something we've hit on a lot. Is just it's going to take, and we've waded through this, and I think we're getting to that spot where people are acclimating to what you just said. 3% is gone.
It's gone.
It's gone. Ain't coming back. And it's just taking time for people to acclimate to this is the new norm, and it's not bad.
No.
I mean. It's historically, you can go back and look, and this is a healthy spot where we're at. So I agree with that. And I think it's only going to get better. I think that we went through a little turbulence there. But, everybody, you hear it too. Everybody, we're going to have another crash. They think we're going to have a crash just because it's been
there's nothing
15 years since we had one.
And there's no evidence of that.
There's no evidence that leads to that.
I'll sit down with anybody in the country and argue that.
Exactly.
And there's no way they'll make me there's no way they'll sway me on that.
Right.
Everybody's tried.
To your point, the subprime deal where they're just giving everybody 100% and then people have no skin in the game. You don't have that now.
And you had a glut of inventory.
Right.
So I mean we're still short on inventory in a lot of areas.
Right.
Yeah. So that's not coming. If you're waiting on that, you're losing money every day.
Right.
Because you could be building equity in something. Yeah.
Well, Adam, I really appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely.
Tell our listeners the easiest way to reach out to you and connect with you.
So, man, I'm big on social media. So anywhere they search for Adam Black Mortgage, they're going to find me. I do a lot of content. That's the easiest way. And then I use myself in my business, 601-540-0302. Yeah, 0302. And, man, just I love what I do. Love walking people through the process.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
really enjoyed your story.
Appreciate it, man.
All right.
Thanks.